Good evening. Thank you for joining us at the Southgate Planning Commission meeting, Tuesday, September 2. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 6:34 p.m. Can I get Jimmy to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And can I get the roll call, please?
Chairperson Ruiz,
Here.
Vice Chairperson Prieto,
Present.
Commissioner Castañeda, Commissioner Osaeta,
Present.
and Commissioner Valenzuela.
Present.
We have a quorum.
I, Javier Barraza, Special Projects Coordinator, certify that a true and correct copy of the foregoing meeting agenda was properly posted on August 28, 2025, 72 hours prior to the scheduled meeting as required by law. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54952.3, disclosure of compensation for meeting attendance by the Planning Commission is $125 per meeting.
Thank you. Now on to consent calendar. If anybody wants to pull any of the one item, 7A. Any of my colleagues?
You're not?
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Get a motion? Motion to approve the minutes?
I second.
And roll call?
I did.
Are all in favor? Oh, okay.
Commissioner Castañeda, Commissioner Osaeta,
Yes.
Commissioner Valenzuela,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Prieto,
Yes.
and Chairperson Ruiz.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Great. Now on to the public hearing.
Yes. We're on item 8A, conditional use permit number 25-02. This planning commission is conducting a public hearing to consider approval of conditional use permit number 25-02 to allow the sale of alcohol, ABC license type 41, beer and wine, for on-site consumption in conjunction with an existing restaurant, Tacos El Único, located at 2801 Firestone Boulevard, Unit B, and finding that the project is categorically exempt from the CEQA under Section 15301, Class 1, existing facilities. Just prior to sending out the agenda, we had a request from the applicant to continue this item to the next scheduled meeting, which is September 16th. And so right now, the recommendation is to continue the meeting. However, we did notice it, properly notice the public hearing, and we received one email from a resident, and I'll have Javier summarize that email from Leticia Tovar.
It was kind of short, so I'm just going to read it. It says, I live right on Chestnut Avenue and Firestone. I do not agree for the city of Southgate to issue this license to this business. We don't need more crime in Southgate. We don't have enough cops to deal with this situation. It was really bad when El Parral nightclub was there. There was a lot of crime, buying and selling of drugs. Someone was also killed at El Parral. I used to work at SGPD Southgate PD night shift, and it was horrible. That's why I know these things. These drunks used to pass by my street throwing bottles at the parked cars. I can go on and on with reasons why I don't agree for the city of Southgate to issue this type of license to Tacos El Único. Most of the employees from the city hall do not live here in our city. Do you don't care? At the end of the day, you go home and don't have to deal with this issue. That's the whole thing.
And with that, our recommendation is that the planning commission open the public hearing, take public testimony as read into the record by Javier, and continue the public hearing to the next regularly scheduled planning commission meeting on September 16th, 2025.
Great. Do we have any comments from the audience? No? Can I get a motion to continue this hearing?
I get the motion.
Any second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Osaeta,
Yes.
Commissioner Valenzuela,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Prieto,
Yes.
Chairperson Ruiz.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. And now on to item number 9, open session items. If you could start us off on the workshop.
Sure. Item 9A is a workshop on the sign ordinance. It's to go over the Southgate Municipal Code, Chapter 11.36. And if I could have Javier help us with the PowerPoint presentation. This workshop is really to provide the Planning Commission with an overview of the city's sign ordinance found in Chapter 11.36 of the Southgate Municipal Code, and also identify ways in which the sign ordinance can be improved. So just some background on the sign ordinance. The sign ordinance was last amended back in 2018. The amendment was a follow-up to the city's comprehensive zoning code update, which was completed in 2015. That update excluded an update to the sign ordinance, and so the city went back in 2018 and adopted ordinance number 2353 to reinstate the previous sign regulations and include minor modifications. The purpose of the sign ordinance is to eliminate excessive and confusing visual blight in the city, and the intent is to develop and encourage signage that provides a harmonious tone and aesthetically pleasing visual character in the city that promotes economic health and public welfare for residents and businesses. And so the objectives are to distinguish individual uses, find signs that are compatible with surrounding land uses, that are architecturally integrated, and to address off-premise advertisements that are compatible. Again, the purpose really is to eliminate the excessive and confusing visual blight. So it's really a welfare issues in terms of why the city has a sign ordinance. And this is an example of why we want to avoid having excessive signage. Excessive signage can be confusing. It can lead to blight. It gets complicated. In this example, we have these are all from other cities. Some of them just outside our city, but you can see how hard it is to read some of these signs that are located. Here we have a pylon sign that has pretty much every single business at that center on that pylon sign. Some of them may have just not only the business name, but also sometimes the phone numbers and website. We have an example right over here on the left side where we have a pole sign where you have the business. I have to block out the phone number and other information there. But you can see that it shows all the other services or products being provided at that business. And it can get hard to read when folks are driving by. The bottom left there, you have a business, a liquor store that has a lot of signage. The front there looks like it may be a painted sign. You have some banners hung up there. You have some window signs, additional banners, and it does get really convoluted, really hard to read. And also, per our code, roof-mounted signs are not permitted. Again, this is in another jurisdiction, so maybe they have regulations that do allow for monument signs. I know we have businesses in our city that have roof-mounted signs there. At some point, the city may have had or may have allowed roof-mounted signs, but our current ordinance doesn't allow for it. So they're considered legal non-conforming, or non-conforming at least to our current code. The bottom right there, another examples of, you have roof-mounted signs. You have signs that look like they project out into the street right of way over the sidewalk, which would require a encroachment permit from Public Works. You have an A-frame sign, those are not allowed in our city. And then you have some window signs and other stuff going on. So, and you may only have maybe a handful of businesses at the location, but all those signs there. So it can really get cluttered and really hard to read. So our sign ordinance found in chapter 11.36, it includes the purpose, objectives, it includes a list of definitions for common terms used in sign regulations. There are general policies. It has a list of prohibited signs and signs that are allowed in public right-of-ways. There are requirements there for new signs, or new signs that are exempt from a sign permit requirement. And there's also signs allowed by, with a sign permit in all zones. Under subsection 090, you have signs allowed by sign permit in commercial and manufacturing zones. There's a section there for off-premise signs, for new sign permit processes, for non-conforming signs, and then the last two sections there for severability and penalty. So just in terms of prohibited signs, that has this shows a list of 18 signs that are actually prohibited in our city. And not to go over each one of them though, but the way our ordinance is set up is you have a list of signs there that are prohibited. And some of these you can see, like with number 2, signs located in public right of way, except as provided. So it prohibits it, but there's a way out, a way that you can actually have it based on certain certain criteria. You had that also for number 13 and 14 for projecting signs and for painted wall signs. They are prohibited, but they are allowed under certain requirements. But again, you do have like rooftop signs and helium-filled balloons that are prohibited just outright in our city. Section 11.36.080 talks about signs allowed by sign permits in all zones. This includes signs for banners across the public right-of-way. Those are usually signs for special events, usually hosted by the city. They're not common, they're not permanent signs though, but they are, again, for special events usually. We do allow for construction announcement signs. So when a construction is about to happen, there's usually a sign out there letting the public know that what's going to be built, who to contact in case there's any problems. Those, again, are usually temporary signs, are taken down after the construction is completed. There are signs for institutional signs, schools and other learning institutions. Number 4 is real estate signs for properties of 1 acre or more to be able to advertise real estate property. Convenience signs, subdivisional directional signs, and identification signs. So just a list of permitted signs that are allowed by a sign permit in all the zones. And then the next section, 1136.090, signs allowed by sign permit in commercial and manufacturing zones. And those are temporary signs that can be displayed for a temporary basis. Number 2 is wall signs. You have freestanding monument and ground signs. I have a couple examples of what these are later on in the presentation, but you can see all the types of signs that are allowed in the commercial and manufacturing zones. In the handout, and our handout actually is on our website, so it is available there. I've included it in part of the staff packet, but there is this diagram here showing what signs are prohibited, shown in the white, and what signs require a city permit. Those are the ones that have the diagonal crosshatch. So you can see with the pole signs, Those are permitted. Monument signs, we do allow for projecting signs, for certain banners, for certain window signs, and for wall signs that promote businesses. Signs that are prohibited are the ones that are mounted on the roof, as shown there, and also A-frame signs that are on the public sidewalk within the public right-of-way. There's also standards in terms of what can be allowed, for like say a pole sign or a monument sign, the size that they can be, the height, and all that in our code. Section 11.36.110, talks about new sign permit process. So there is a process that we have to require permits prior to installation. There's a sign permit application that's required that needs to be completed. If an applicant has a sign that requires approval by the planning commission, which is a sign theme, our code calls it sign themes, but other codes call them sign programs. They're sort of the same thing. Those are programs that have the standards there for the entire shopping center or center, industrial center there. So it really controls all the signs that can be placed on a property, and those do require planning commission approval. Under this section, there's also a subsection there that talks about sign variances that lets you deviate from the standards with planning commission approval. And there's also standards there for administrative plan. And number 4 there is just, it points you to section 1136.120, which talks about existing non-conforming signs. And I do want to go over a couple of examples. I think it's a good way for the commission and the public to learn about what signs we want and what signs are typically discouraged in cities. So I didn't want to pick on any businesses within our city, so these are all examples of signs that are outside of our city. Some of them may be close by, just outside our borders, but these are cabinet or can signs. And those are the rectangular sized signs you see on there, where it's really just a cabinet and a front face there with the business. Those are usually discouraged by other cities. They are allowed in our city because we don't have standards or a way of prohibiting them. So I know that they've been approved before in the past. But these are usually discouraged because of the clutter that they have. On the example here at the top left, you kind of see some signs there that stretch pretty much the full length of the tenant space. A lot of them show the products or the services being provided by that business. Some of these signs may have like a phone number or website or email that might be really hard to read from far away, and it creates clutter. And they're also mixed in with like window signs, which makes it even harder to read. So just an example of what other cities really discourage just because of how it can look. The one at the very bottom there, you see the whole shopping center has can signs. They also have it looks like some banners that are displayed. But the combination of having these cabinet or can signs with some banners and also having the windows being 100% covered with signs makes it really hard and cluttered. These also have these flag or pennant signs out in the parking lot, and those are usually discouraged also or even prohibited in other cities. If anything, the photo right over here on the right center may be an example of a good cabinet sign that we may want to see. It's not perfectly rectangular. You can kind of tell that the corners are kind of cut off, so it's more of an octagon shape rather than a perfect rectangle. And they are sort of spaced out equally, so they're not right next to each other. But most cities lean towards having individual channel letters, and these are actually examples within our city of individual channel letters. So we have some signs here that are located in the Azalea Shopping Center that have individual channel letters. Many of them are internally illuminated, so at night you're able to read them. You can see that they're kind of spaced out. They're not cluttered. They're easier to read. They also provide that they're not flat against the wall. They provide some relief off of the wall. So these are usually what cities do prefer. We also have them for individual businesses like the Starbucks at the top right corner. The Southgate Car Wash is also a good example. We have like different types of font there, different colors to show what they're show the business and what they're providing. You also have that kind of design there with the, I guess, a wave. So it's not on one flat surface. They're sort of individual, and cities usually find them to be of higher quality. We do have this example of a shopping center that has individual channel letters there. So they're spaced out. They really just show the business name there. Donut Place sort of shows the product, or even the nail and spa, what service they're providing. But they are individual channel letters and spaced out in the shopping center. These are usually controlled by having a sign program at the center. We've done some research and we found out that we really don't have any sign programs or sign themes other than maybe the Azalea Shopping Center and a new one over at LA Promise, which we require to have a sign theme for. But what's nice about having a sign theme is it has all the requirements there. So if somebody wanted to move into a shopping center, there's already standards there in which they would have to abide by in order to put up a sign at that shopping center. And these are just some examples that I pulled from the web in terms of some improvements, some before and after photos. So on the left side there, you see a sign that's kind of worn out. There are some missing faces there. You see like 2 columns of signs. And the after photo shows 1 column there of just the businesses. So it's cleaner than what you see over on the right, the before picture, where there might be a lot more signage there. On the top right, you have a before and after of the Target. So at the before, you have a couple of signs there. This actually isn't too bad, but they decided to do without all the other signs and just have the Target on there, so it's easier to read. The bottom right, you have a before of a pole sign showing some signage there and some businesses, and they cleaned that out. And this is what cities are really preferring with pole signs. They'd rather not do the single pole. These are usually sometimes called lollipop signs. Cities are going to more of the pylon sign, which is more decorative. You often have different types of materials, maybe some stone and some other type of materials there for the pylon. You also have a sort of like a roof type at the very top. And you can kind of see on this example, it has the name of the shopping center at the very top, maybe the anchor tenant or major tenant there. So it may be a larger shopping center that may have multiple tenants, but they only put the anchors and the major tenants on the pylon sign. And that's typical. You don't want to have too much clutter on these signs because it makes it harder to read. And these are just some examples in our city in Southgate. So you probably recognize some of these signs. We do have some monument signs. Those are the ones that are on the ground. So these are actually on Tweedy, where you have the Burger King, the McDonald's, El Pollo Loco, and the IHOP. So individual monument signs for the businesses. There are examples of the channel letters, individual channel letters that I talked about earlier. The one over here is a dentist office where they kind of use, instead of an M, they have a logo that kind of shows a tooth. And then you have the laundromat. What's nice about this sign is if you get the sun in the right angle, you kind of have that shadow there. So that is that 3D effect. And then at the very bottom there, you have an example of individual channel letters for multiple tenants. And then the pylon sign on the right, that's over at Azalea. I'm sure you've all been there. You all know the businesses. There's a lot of businesses over there, but this really just lists the your anchor, your major tenants, and maybe some of the restaurant uses there. So you don't have all the signs on there, so it's not too cluttered, but you do have the major stores located at that shopping center. And also, this pylon sign was approved under a sign program. It's one of the two that we're aware of in our city. And this kind of shows an example of the Azalea Shopping Center sign program or sign theme. There are requirements there for the size, the color of the signs that you could have for the individual tenants. You may have signs for the individual pad tenants. That might be a little bit bigger than what you might see with the individual tenant spaces. It does allow for secondary signs. Secondary signs are usually signs that show like either the product or service being provided at that business. It has an example of a monument sign down below, and of course the pylon sign. So it lets you know how tall they can be, how wide they can be. The map in the middle there shows the location of each sign. They're color coded, so you can see where the pylon signs are located. I think there's one on Atlantic and maybe two on Firestone. It may have some monument signs spread throughout, and then what businesses are considered the anchor, the majors, and the maybe some of the minor tenants there, and individual pad tenants. So this sign program controls all the signs that can be placed on there. You would still need a permit from the city before putting that up there, but it sort of provides some guidance in terms of what you can have. And then with discussions with staff, this is one of the things that we do like to see, that other cities like to see, and these are the halo lit signs where you have some light coming up from the back, and so it does provide that 3D effect, and it looks, interesting at night. These are just some examples that we pulled from the internet. Some of these have the channels are internally illuminated, so the front face is also illuminated, and some of them are just the back, and that's what you see in this example. So in terms of our sign program, we do have standards for what we can allow for pole signs and what we can allow for freestanding monument signs. These standards are listed in that example that we have, the handout that we have in back of the staff packet. And so it lets you know what zones you can have them in. They're basically the manufacturing and commercial zones, what the requirements would be for the minimum street frontage, 150 feet, the maximum area of the signs, where they can be located. You can't have them on top of the building roof line for a pole sign. There's a setback requirement. It indicates there you can only have one pole sign per parcel, but again, you can get away from that by having a sign theme or sign program that has to be approved by the Planning Commission. And it also indicates that signs may only be internally illuminated. So those are the pole signs. We also have requirements for freestanding monument signs that are sort of similar. What zones are allowed in, the commercial zones and the manufacturing zones, and the maximum area and height. So just some examples of pylon signs and monument signs. On the left-hand side, you have an example of a monument sign there. Generally speaking, they're probably about 6 to 10 feet tall or so. The very bottom there is a really large sign over at the Citadel Shopping Center, where you have a monument sign. You can kind of see where the car is, so you can kind of tell that it is a pretty big structure. But then you have examples of our pylon signs. The one there on the middle left is in our city, in Southgate, the Crossroads Shopping Center with the Aldi's, and that's what the city's approved for that shopping center. The two on the right are just outside our city. The one here, kind of like in the middle, is located in Southgate. I believe this is the one on Atlantic. And then the one on the far right is the one over on Alameda. The thing about this one I noticed is they do have multiple pylon signs. You see one here in the front, in the foreground, and another one in the background. And there's also one kind of behind this one. So they have at least 3 of these located on Alameda, which kind of tells me there's probably some standards in terms of how far they have to be from one another, because they're really only advertising for vehicles going on Alameda Street, close by. And that's really it. We do realize that there's a lot in our sign ordinance. We do think that there's a lot that we can improve. What I wanted to stress is we do have a lot of standards in there in terms of location, size, height. But what we don't have is what other cities have, and those are, I guess, design standards. What materials should be used, preferences. Most cities prefer individual channel letters over your cabinet signs. Most cities like that internally or halo lit signs where you have the backing in the back. So what we would recommend is maybe updating our sign ordinance so that we do have some design standards in there in terms of what we prefer and what we wouldn't prefer. Right now, it makes it really difficult for staff to prohibit or to discourage cabinet signs because our code really doesn't do that. When somebody does propose a cabinet sign, we sort of are obligated to approve it without having a sign program because they are allowed. There are other signs that our code allows also. Going throughout the city of Southgate, you can kind of see painted signs. Other cities usually prohibit painted signs, but in our city, we do allow for that. And it seems also that I guess previous staff may have held painted signs to a higher level. I'm not exactly sure, but they may have required planning commission approval in the past. And that's something that maybe we can improve in our sign ordinance, just the standards or the procedures and protocols that we have in order to approve some of these signs. I did want to sort of focus on some of these. I know that there's a lot more we can be talking about when it comes to signage, but we do want to get your thoughts on what the planning commission sees and what the public sees in desirable signs and signs that we'd rather not have in our city. We do realize that there's a lot of signs in our city that are non-conforming. Some of them may have been permitted a long time ago prior to the city updating its ordinance. Some of them may be illegal and the city just hasn't enforced them, And it is hard to do the enforcement part of it because after a time, folks they may get used to seeing the signs there. But I think if the city should start by upgrading the regulations if you want to see the city improve aesthetically and avoid having all the clutter that you might see in some signs. So with that, that's our presentation, and our recommendation is really to receive the presentation, ask staff any questions that you may have, open the item for public comment for the public, discuss the item, provide direction to staff. And again, our recommendation would really be to maybe consider an ordinance amendment so we can include some design standards in there, and then ultimately receive and file this item. So that's our presentation.
Thank you, John. Do any of my colleagues have any questions for staff?
Clarification. So just so that I understand it, it's coming up because we are finding that we're not up to date with the signage, or?
Well, one of the things we talked about at our staff meeting is it really is hard to regulate some of these signs because we do have newer staff here, so they have a fresh new set of eyes looking at our sign ordinance. There may have been policies in the past that were adopted that weren't included in the ordinance, so those policies were never passed down. But we do know, having our experience working for other cities would rather prefer, not approving cabinet signs. The preference is to go with channel letters or other decorative signs other than just having a rectangular sign there. So in terms of wall signs, that's something that we would like to see. In terms of like other signs, like pole signs are usually discouraged in other cities. We'd rather see pylon signs with decorative material, and just having a little bit more control over the design of what people can put.
Thank you.
I would add that if you asked if it was out of date, it probably is, because when the zoning ordinance was revamped in 2015, it seems that the chapter on signs was overlooked, because even though many of the other zoning sections got updated, zoning was just left out. And when that was discovered, we just went back to the old code and put this. So the sign chapter in the zoning code really didn't undergo the same examination and overhaul that all of the other chapters in the zoning code did. So that's another reason to argue that it's overdue for us to take another look and modernize the zoning code, the sign code.
Any other questions? I have a question, a couple questions and a comment. Thank you. It was very thorough. I didn't realize the amount of signage that we have available. But I did have a question regarding people that stand up with signs. Usually there's individuals like on Tweety, let's say when there's like taxes going on, there's certain people that stand up with signs. Is that allowable?
I didn't, I didn't see that as being a prohibited sign in there. Usually cities do prohibit that. The other take, I guess, is if it's not actually mentioned as being allowed, then it's not permitted.
Yeah, I noticed that during tax season, they usually have like a Statue of Liberty out there, or also pizza. Pizzas, they stand out there with the signs. Just wondering if that's non-conforming or,
It's probably not a non-conforming sign. I think it's probably more a question of, is it a property use or is it?
it's more like
related
advertising. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's without a specific section of the municipal code to address that. It's hard to even determine whether that's a zoning issue or falls within some other city department and some other part of the municipal code. But again, that's something that as we look to update the sign code, we can address that and we can see how other cities address it and hopefully add some language to our sign code that addresses that without running afoul of the Constitution or other issues.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, maybe a comment and a couple questions. So is there, in regards to like next steps for staff, or are there any recommendations that the staff want to kind of incorporate specifically around an ordinance for certain areas of our city? Is that how this kind of came to the forefront? I mean, I know there's been some nice little upgrades on Tweety Mile, probably like 20 years overdue, but you know, what does that look like now moving forward for those businesses? Is that what's kind of brought about maybe revisiting this ordinance?
Yes, so I actually wanted to kind of not focus too much on Tweety and Hollandale because they're actually located in specific plan areas, and there's specific requirements for them. I wanted to kind of focus on the overall ordinance for the city for all other uses. But that's a good question. One of the things that our staff is struggling with is when they look at the signs is there are no standards in there or no guidelines in terms of what can be approved and what's preferred and what's not. And so I think beefing up our ordinance where we have like a list of preferential signs that we would like to see would help us in that. Having certain design standards in terms of what is preferred over what is not would help.
And I guess my follow-up is I had a client and I was navigating a project specific around signage for that respective business. And one of the things that comes up and is often maybe overlooked is that there might be a recommendation that is in the best interest of the city, but there's also cost variance from different types of signages. So for example, like your cabinet signage is significantly less expensive than if you go through a channel letter kind of approach or like a halo or more of a decorative kind of approach. So there's pros and cons in how you navigate that, especially when you're navigating businesses, small businesses in our community. So it's that fine balance that needs to be kind of taken into account, right? Unless there's going to be a specific type of look or theme that is ironed out for a specific section or street of our city that will help make that street more visually appealing as well as the businesses. So there has to be some kind of leeway or compromise so that it is mutually beneficial for the business owner who will have to embark on probably some kind of capital improvement for that respective business or site. And I know there is little to be done because there's some things that are grandfathered in. But as you look at moving forward, if there is a new business moving into a new location, at that point, the new ordinance would then technically come into play, and then there'd be a list of recommendations from the city in regards to like what they can put up moving forward. Is that kind of maybe what?
The new business moving in, could keep the same sign. I mean, if there was a cabinet sign, even if we change the law to say all signs must be can letters, if there's an existing cabinet sign there, that sign is grandfathered in, and the person with the grandfathered rights is not the specific owner at the time, but it's any future user of the property. So a new tenant could come in, and if all that needed to be done was to take out the sign panel of the old business and put in the sign panel of the new business, then that would be a legal non-conforming use, and the new owner wouldn't have to, or the new business operator wouldn't have to build a whole new sign. So to some degree, that your concern would be alleviated by just the way that zoning works, and you can't cause a zoning change that's immediately going to make somebody have to tear down his building and build something brand new. But you're right, it's something that you have to balance, and that's something that we try to deal with when we write the law, and something that you get to deal with when we ask you to recommend it to the city council.
Maybe the other thing that kind of comes to mind, and I'm sorry, I'm on a roll now. This is pretty cool. Is there is also, I mean, there's a city program with the CDBG funds that are going to specific business owners to kind of help with maybe the facade of a respective business. Like, I'm assuming that that can potentially be utilized to maybe upgrade or create some kind of a theme around potential signage on. I go back to Tweedy Mile because that in essence is really a big part of our city that has been, I would say, forgotten for quite some time, and not until the recent developments with the new asphalt and new sidewalks and new trees, it's becoming more visually appealing. So maybe that might be something for the city to take into account, given that the CBDG funds would allow for that type of maybe enhancement or visually appealing shift in signage for specific areas of Tweedy Mile. I mean, clearly it's not going to be able to navigate the entire Tweedy Mile area, but from the looks of it, I know there is a certain limited amount of funding available for improvements from business owners, to your point, or landlords, or whatever the case may be for those respective buildings. But just the thought, if that was something that you all would consider.
Yes, and we currently are working on the program right now, and you probably have heard about it. But yeah, we are looking to provide funding for certain businesses in order to improve their signage. Right now, it's focused on Tweedy, and I believe that's getting started right now. But there probably are other opportunities to, find funding that helps other businesses for the rest of the city, at some future point.
Like, this is probably an ideal time to look at what an ordinance would look like potentially for a specific sector of your city. I mean, keeping into account the greater city, right? But this might be a perfect opportunity to kind of upgrade or kind of bring up to speed what the city would like to do moving forward for just the overall city, but just taking into account that there's like a little bit more synergy with what's happening down that specific area.
Just to clarify, though, that program on Tweedy it's a facade program, so it's not just the signs.
Right.
The sign is just one aspect of it, but it's the overall look at the storefront that we're looking at.
But with the facade comes the potential signage. So if there's an ordinance that is already in place when they're upgrading the facade, then there can potentially be a little bit more influence on what the look would be for that respective area.
Yeah. And that facade program is really to help, I guess, your smaller type businesses that may be struggling with financially with being able to improve their business frontage. If you have like a new shopping center or a new development that's coming in and they want to kind of demolish the building or like put up a brand new building, then yeah, the city would have more leverage in terms of what the signage would look like. We can require a sign program. We can I guess, improve the look, the signage of, you know, what's going to be there later on. Ultimately, what happens when the building gets built, it's going to be there for another 40, 50 plus years potentially or longer. So we want to make sure that we do have, you know, appropriate signage that looks good, that can last over time. For the ones that are already existing, that are considered, you know, legal non-conforming, that's what happens with cabinet signs, though. As our Assistant City Attorney had mentioned, you know, when you have a cabinet sign up there, a new business goes in that location, they can just simply take out the face and then put up their own face. So you never get that upgrade to a nicer looking sign. It's always going to be a cabinet sign once the city approves it.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, you asked the question I had related to grandfathered signs and how long they can keep using those signs and what efforts we would have to um, take to get them to change that. And especially considering the CDBG funding, how much longer we'd even have access to that. But I think I agree with my colleague. I think it would be great to maybe do those and focus on specific particular zones to really encourage the signage change. Um, and because I mean, it seems like it's a particularly difficult time, I think, to even go back and see who's keeping up with the signage. Um, in regards to enforcement. So what the capacity would be to make sure that, you know, tenants that do come in upgrade or the new owners upgrade the signage.
Yeah. Our non-conforming section actually has a requirement there where if you're trying to improve an older sign and there's you got to spend more than 50% of the valuation, then you can't do it. You got to, you know, take it down or come up with something else. But it does allow for, like, if you have a legal non-conforming sign, like say a roof sign, and somebody wanted to make basic improvements to it, then they could. If you want, let's say you wanted them to get rid of it, I guess the only really real way you can do that is if the sign is like really worn out, where you have to have have to replace it 100%. Then we can tell them no. It's, you know, past its life, and you're going to be spending more than 50% of the cost of that sign to redo it. It's basically a whole new sign.
Yeah, because at some point they become an eyesore too, especially when a tenant leaves and those, like I'm thinking of monument signs when there's like an empty or missing panel or something. But yeah, no, this is a good discussion to start having. Any other comments before we open it up to the audience? No?
One last one. I think in this case with signage and anything, as technology just advances, like it's just inevitable, right? Because at some point, cabinet signs was like the wave. Like that's what was in. That's what technology was, you know, where it was. And now over the last, you know, 10 years or so, like you've seen a significant increase in technology, and that also comes affordability because it's just that much more available. So hopefully that can lend itself to, you know, making sure that whatever suggestions or recommendations the city has for some of our businesses moving forward, that it would be something that would maybe be enticing for folks to say, hey, you know what, this might be a good thing for me to kind of enhance my visibility for my respective business or for my future tenant, right? It might be worth the investment. Because ultimately, I think that's a big part. As a tenant comes in, you know, location is a big part of the success of a business. So not only just the quality of whatever they're selling, but I think that is being visually appealing, the placing of the business, the location overall goes a long way. Is there the next steps for city staff to provide some kind of recommendations to the planning commission? Is that what you see as next steps in regards to like an ordinance around this?
Yeah, I mean, we are looking for some direction from the planning commission. I mean, our recommendation is really that, yeah, we should be updating the sign ordinance, but we would like to see some direction or some preference with the planning commissioners to see, you know, I guess what type of signs you would like to see, what type of signs you don't. And you do make a good point though, I mean, because technology does change. Who knows, next 5 or 10 years we may have different types of signs there that if we don't write the or if we make our sign ordinance too restrictive, we may be prohibiting those types of new signs, and they may be great signs that we just can't allow. So,
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see anything related to, what was it? Our neighboring city, Huntington Park, with their welcome sign down Pacific Boulevard with the TV, or what is it? It's like a
Yeah, the
jumbotron.
Jumbotron. So yeah, so we're trying to avoid that. Is that what we're trying to do? Here? Maybe that might be a good step. But just I mean, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I think it would be, beneficial for staff to provide some kind of like a standard cost for different types of signages. So like a channel, like for a box or for a cabinet sign, from a channel lettering kind of approach for like the standard business fronts that we kind of navigate throughout the city. I think that would be beneficial so that if there is a recommendation that we factor that in as well. Because I think affordability is also something at the forefront when we're dealing with a lot of our smaller family-owned businesses.
It would be-
Just the thought. I mean, that would just,
Yeah, it would be great to also hear from, or if there's any comments that maybe our colleagues at the Tweety Mile Association might have on this. I don't know if this is
Yeah.
something they might be interested in discussing.
definitely.
yeah, what we're talking about is,
You want to share your comments?
Yeah, related to maybe relaying this to the Tweety Mile Association to see if they have any ideas or comments or concerns related to the signage.
It probably wouldn't affect Tweety Mile because that's its own specific plan. So if we're making general changes to the signs, to the signage code in general, that might not apply to Tweety Mile.
Got it.
The Chamber of Commerce, the Southgate Chamber of Commerce, they'll have like input on other businesses across the city. At least you would think that they would have, right? And if not, maybe that's also another way for us to get more folks involved with the chamber.
Get feedback.
Or more folks involved with this, with this commission. But yes, public input's not a bad thing.
Should we open it up to the audience now? Any audience comments on signs? No. ¿Ocupa translación o? Oh. Oh, entonces si no es de este sujeto, podemos en el siguiente, la siguiente porción de la junta, en los comentarios, abrimos para que pueda preguntar cualquier cosa que no esté asociada con los signs. Gracias. And there's an email.
Mario Dominguez Jr. wrote in an email commenting about the workshop. I summarized it. I provided you the full version and then the bullet point version. He has a general statement about the workshop. He says, number one, the city should have authority over the location and height of flagpoles on the residential, commercial, and industrial properties to prevent random placement and maintain visual standards. Number two, for murals, the city should have veto power and approval input on mural designs. Community feedback and suggestions should be part of the mural approval process since residents live alongside the artwork. Number three, neon signs versus digital/LED. He has strong support for encouraging neon signage over digital/LED signs. The city should explore ways to promote or incentivize neon signs among businesses. And then number four, roof signs. Questions the current prohibition of roof signs as seen on page 28 on the report. believes businesses should be allowed to install signs, including neon, on rooftops, requests an explanation and consideration to change the rule to allow roof signage for business visibility and identity. That's it.
Did you want to address any of those comments, John?
Yeah, I can, so, the first one, regards to the flagpoles, are, and this is interesting because we recently had one there, but our sign ordinance does allow for for flagpoles. It's just that there's no height in there. And so, we addressed this before in a previous project. But in terms of, I think he has a point, because he does say, yeah, city should have some control or the approval of the height of the flagpole. So that is something that we can address also in a sign ordinance. His second one there is in regards to the murals. And he mentioned that he doesn't like the fact that the city has no control or input over the designs of murals that are painted in our city. And he talks about having put a condition that gives the city and the residents control over the murals that will be painted in our city. One of the things that we've been talking about with staff is, because our sign ordinance does sort of mention murals in there, it is a little bit confusing because it's in the section for wall signs. And under the definitions, it says that a mural is not, it doesn't promote the business, the services, or the product being sold at the business, which makes it kind of hard because I guess a lot of the businesses, sometimes have that. But one of the things we're talking about with staff is possibly deferring that, maybe taking it out of our sign ordinance and giving that responsibility to one of the other commissions that may have control over fine arts, or arts in public places. So
I thought they
That's-
did. Because I know, didn't one of the recent murals on Tweety go to the Parks Commission, the arts, what was it, or was it here? It was here. Oh, I'm confused. I'm mixing up my meetings. Yeah, so it did come here.
I thought they came to,
The orchard, yeah. The orchard did go
Oh.
to the parks. Yeah.
well, yeah, and I'm not sure that wasn't, the rules are different for public property. When a property owner wants to paint a mural on the side of his building, the government is more limited into what it can say no to, as are frankly the neighbors, who may not like the mural, but it's not their property, it's somebody else's property so it's trickier when a private citizen wants to paint a mural on the side of his own building, versus when the city decides what sort of art it wants to have in its own public park.
So what maybe guidelines can be provided by the city in regards to murals and design and approval process and?
Yeah, we've struggled with this every time we get a mural here, because the current ordinance simply says that, a mural is a wall sign that doesn't advertise what's being sold at the business. And with respect to murals, the size, height, locations, and other restrictions shall be reviewed by the planning commission. So that suggests that staff will come up with restrictions on the mural and bring it to you all with a recommendation to consider the restrictions that staff has recommended for it, and then you get to weigh in on the restrictions that staff has suggested, maybe modify those restrictions. Unclear whether you could add other restrictions. So the very the word mural pops up 3 times in the zoning code, and so, or the municipal code. So what we want to do is either take it out entirely and put it to a different city body, or figure out how to give all of us on both sides of the dais here more guidance as to what to do about murals, rather than just saying, well, here's the one sentence that's in the code and you guys figure it out. So hopefully, a year from now, when a mural permit comes before you, you'll have better guidelines than we have to offer you right now.
I guess my maybe for clarity is, I guess my question was like, what kind of guidelines can a city put just without looking at what we currently have? Because I know you mentioned for a private kind of property, there's less somewhat oversight on, say, that the city can kind of impose on that particular building, as opposed to a public entity like a park or the side of a water tank at at a business or a city-owned property. There's a little bit more community involvement when it comes to that planning.
To some degree, it's the same type of restrictions that you saw on the slides for signs, things that might be a traffic safety. If you've got materials that are going to reflect the sun into the eyes of drivers on the street, that would be the type of thing that the city would legitimately say, no, you can't have mirrors on your murals. Murals that would incite people to riot, or had racially offensive comments on them. I think that would be a situation where the city could say, without trotting on somebody's First Amendment rights, there are just certain words that you cannot paint on the side of your building. So there are limits, and right now, I mean, things that are not content based at all. If it's like, well, the mural can't cover more than X% of the wall, or can't extend above the parapet, things like that are what you could legitimately say, and this falls. Or like right now, we've got window signage. You can't have more than a very small percentage of your windows painted over with a sign. So all of those things would be what you could do. When you start to become less government officials and more art critics, that's when we get into trouble.
And that was going to be my question with that, like related to fonts or even themes. Is that something that could be that we can set guidelines for?
I don't know. I think it would be, when you were talking about business signage, I think
murals.
that would be more appropriate, because you don't want people trying to decipher a very elaborate script as they're driving down the street and blocking traffic as they slow down to see, is that where the barber shop is? On a piece of art, it's harder for you to say, we only want Helvetica lettering on this, rather than what you've drawn. That becomes a little more difficult to justify city intervention in this private work of art.
No, that makes sense, and I totally understand as a heavy metal fan when it comes to reading signs and logos, the need for a clean sign. And so, do any of my colleagues have a motion to move this forward?
Is this just a file?
It's to file, and I think they were asking for recommendations.
Yeah, we are looking for like some
Direction.
direction.
You kind of mentioned something, right? To kind of bring up, or I mentioned the ability to the costs. Well, you mentioned the costs.
Yeah.
I mentioned the ability to bring in more public input on
Yeah.
this also.
I mean, this could be a first step in sort of like, this could be like the introduction to this item. We could have another workshop, possibly do some more research based on the discussion today. Like, we could do more research to see what other cities are requiring, what signs that they prefer and what they don't. We can also maybe do some research and find out how much signs cost, like a cabinet sign compared to individual channel letters. So that might be something that we might be able to do, just provide you more information at a future workshop, or you give direction for us to update the sign code and, bring that, get that moving. So I can tell you though, I mean, we are sort of busy with our staff now, even though we're full staffed. I mean, it does get busy with other work. So just being able to update the code and, move forward. It may take some time.
Yeah. And I think it would be a good first step too to reach out to like you said, maybe Anna with the Chamber of Commerce to just kind of maybe give them a heads up, like, hey, this is something that's going to be coming up soon, and if any of your people want to have a say on what the city's going to look like, pretty much, and how, I mean, who better than to give their opinion than the people who are going to be affected?
Right.
Great. So can I get a motion to receive and file?
I can make the motion to receive and file with that recommendation to revisit the sign ordinance at a later time.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Osaeta,
Yes.
Commissioner Valenzuela,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Prieto,
Yes.
and Chairperson Ruiz.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Great. So now on to item number 10A, audience comments. Ahora, si puede venir y a hacer su comentario, I'll do my best to translate. Aquí en el micrófono. Sí, pero tiene que prender el micrófono para que se grabe.
Ok, buenas tardes, muchas gracias por darme la oportunidad. No sé si este es el lugar correcto para hacer mi pregunta, pero
Sí, puede decir su nombre
mi nombre es Marta Moreno.
y es residente aquí de la ciudad.
Sí, vivo en la ciudad de Southgate, aquí sobre la Elizabeth. Y hace un poco más que un año tenían un programa, no sé si aquí es el lugar para hacer mi pregunta.
She's
Tenían-
wondering if this is the correct place to make this question. About a year ago, there was a program.
Sí, que iban a dar unos planos para los ADUs y estuvimos participando en las juntas, pero hemos venido varias veces aquí a preguntar y están bien así parados y no, siempre que venimos dicen, pues no se ha movido, no se ha movido.
So she's asking about that there was supposed to be a program where they were going to be providing plans for ADUs, and she's been coming to several meetings, and there hasn't been. And every time she's asked about it, they said that the program hasn't moved forward.
Sí.
¿Y cuál es su pregunta? ¿Si todavía existe ese programa o cuál es el estatus?
La última vez, hace como 2 meses, lo que me dijeron fue que están esperando que tengan tiempo o personas para que pongan el programa en línea o en el sistema para que la gente que está interesada pueda mirar lo que la ciudad va a proveer, los planos, y que alguien, y lo puede uno escoger, pero eso nos han estado diciendo desde varios meses atrás.
Yeah,
Y no se mueven, no pasa nada.
So she's been wondering if there have been any plans set for residents to kind of look through to see if they can choose and move forward with ADU plans, particular ADU plans.
Yes, we are working on that program, and actually, I think we're in the process of updating our website to provide that information to the public. And we do have, I guess, some pre-approved plans that the public can work with. But
Okay.
it is in the process, yes. And if you provide us with your contact information, we can contact you, let you know when that program is ready.
Ya dijo que sí, no sé si la entendió, pero dijo que sí están en ese proceso y que ya van a poner la información en el website y así ya usted puede ver cuáles planes y cuándo van a estar disponibles, pero si le puede dar su información y ellos le pueden hablar para decirle cuándo van a estar disponibles.
Sí, la última vez que hablamos con la persona, habían puesto una persona, ahorita se me olvida su nombre del señor, que estaba responsable, porque primero era Sandra y luego pasaron a él. Me dijo en 2 meses que él me iba a llamar en un mes. Ya pasaron 2 meses, no me ha llamado, pero todavía puedo dejar mi información para ojalá que esta vez sí pase algo.
Sí, 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 aquí la puede dejar. Aquí yo pienso que es am, un buen espacio para dejar su información porque así ya está en el récord que vino y hacer su pregunta y así ya para la siguiente junta podemos preguntar nosotros qué sucedió con su caso. Pero sí, si le da su información
¿A quién se la puedo dar?
a John o aquí también.
John, do you have a tentative date when that's going to be put on the online?
I could respond.
Okay.
So I'm in charge of that program. Lo acabamos de poner en el website la semana pasada
Oh.
y
Oh.
esta semana les iba a hablar para las personas. Nomás hay como 8 personas que fueron interesadas y a lo mejor va a haber otro workshop, pero también puede venir en persona al counter
Ujú.
y hay ejemplos de lo que hay en el website.
Entonces está bien.
Sí.
Cuando venga, ¿con quién puedo hablar ahí?
Conmigo, yo le agarro su información y yo ya la tengo, me imagino.
Sí, disculpe, ¿su nombre es?
Yo soy Javier.
Javier. Creo que sí con usted hablamos, no me
Sí.
acuerdo.
So, lo acabamos de poner en el website y si quiere después del meeting le digo de dónde está en el website.
Está bien.
Ok.
Muchas gracias
Ok.
a todos.
Ok.
Buenas tardes.
Y suerte.
So I just responded that we posted it last week, and then we have like 8 people that came to the workshops that were interested, and then this week we were going to respond to those people that were interested by email or by phone. That it's posted on the website, or they can come to the counter and get like an example of what's on the website.
And we can also take down her contact information and let her know.
Great, thank you. Any written comments?
There's a written comment from Mario Dominguez Jr. I provided you the summary from like an AI summary, but I found some errors in it, so I'm just gonna go back and forth from the summary to the whole thing. So it's from Mario Dominguez Jr. The speaker recently confirmed with Marisa Montero, an assistant planner in Downey, that the city of Downey has collected Quimby fees since passing an ordinance in 2008. He expressed frustration that his own city has failed to adopt a similar ordinance, despite Quimby fees existing since 1965 and being designated solely for park-related projects. The speaker criticizes the city council members for the decades-long inaction, highlighting the missed opportunity to fund parks. He calls for immediate steps to move the issue forward and question whether anyone in the city leadership actually cares.
Great, thank you. Any,
Yeah, I can respond to that. So Quimby fees are related to subdivisions, and cities can apply those, when an applicant is requesting a subdivision. And my understanding also was that, at least in the past, Quimby fees were only, or were used to, you'd have to purchase land to develop or to provide for a new park. I believe that's changed so that cities can now use that money, or take that, to put in the pool to maintain certain parks, for improvements. But again, that's sort of dealing with subdivisions. I think Mr. Dominguez may be talking about development impact fees, which is something that the city could consider for new development. But that would be something that the city council would have to adopt. They would have to adopt the fee, the process, in order to be able to collect those development impact fees.
got it, thank you. Any other staff comments?
None.
Any planning commission comments?
All right. In regards to Quimby fees and the developmental impact fees, is that what you're referring to? Those, I know that's not within our discretion. That lives with city council. I think that's been very clear. But is there a way for that to for there to be a recommendation to kind of look at that on behalf of the city council. I know city council has referenced that they continue to look at potential fees associated with development, but I don't know how far along that is. I know Gabriel has been great at mentioning that that they're putting together some kind of report that identifies what some of the neighboring cities are doing along those lines. Do you have an update on that, or is that maybe, and I'll refer to Greg, is that maybe like a recommendation that we can provide on behalf of the planning commission to look at that so that you can report back to folks? Because I don't know if there's much traction, especially the urgency that we're facing as a city, what, $9.2 million in the hole. That would be much needed revenue. We will not see all in one day, but at least it's a step in the right direction, at least to entertain.
Yeah, my understanding is, I guess, Public Works is taking the lead on that and working on looking at development back fees and other fees that the city may be able to impose on that. Other than that, I think you're right. They probably have been working on it for a while to be able to get through. Ultimately, again, that would be the city council's call in order to adopt those development impact fees.
I also wanted to bring up just updates on some of the CUPs that have been passed. I'm not really sure where we are related to some of the updates. I think off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the Target Winery wine tasting conditional use permit. And then I don't know if the CUP was also supposed to be revisited for the property on Tweedy and Atlantic.
I think for CUPs, you generally include a condition requiring a 6-month review.
Yeah.
I hope that we haven't missed any of those 6 months reviews, but I guess we can check the last the CUPs that we've issued in the last 6 months to make sure that or beyond, to make sure that we haven't failed to bring back to you a matter that you asked us to consider.
Yeah. Those are the only ones I could think of the top of my head.
What about pending items that we vote on that go on to city council? Is there like a report on what happened with some of those that maybe haven't been kind of squared away by city council that are still pending?
Yeah, so right now I can think of two of them. The Adela project, which is the City Ventures project over at Adela, that had been appealed to City Council. They eventually approved that with a modification to the condition. That was a while ago. The other item that is I guess pending before the City Council is the Mr. Cease over at Rayo, and that one involved a zone change. So that went to Planning Commission. You recommended approval of the zone change. It is going before the City Council, but we need to work on the environmental for that first. And then once that environmental is ready, then we can bring that item to the City Council for their consideration of the zone change.
What about the environmental impact report for the zoning around that area?
Environmental impact report. We're currently
For the warehouse limit.
the warehouse limit. Yes, so that's another one. We're calling that the Southgate Ford project. One of the items in that was to consider the 15,000 square foot limit on warehousing use. We sort of packaged it along with other things, including the transit center and the commercial corridors. We were looking at some funding sources because there may be some funding sources there for the transit centers that we may be able to provide. We did send out a request for proposal, and we were able to receive proposals from 3 different firms. We reviewed those firms. We selected one. We were going to make that recommendation over to city council to get going, but right now we're looking at the scope. The city had some issues, I guess, financially, so we are trying to reduce the scope or the cost in order to do that. Some, in part also by providing funding for parts of that, including the funding for the transit centers. So it is still going. It's just kind of been on hold.
Got it. Thank you.
I should announce also that we are looking to do we have I guess a CEQA bench, environmental consultant bench that we use to handle our environmental documents, our environmental impact reports, our mitigated negative declarations, and our technical reports for Class 32 exemptions. We're looking to, I guess, increase that bench to have additional consultants, not only for environmental, but also for landscaping, for planning services, for economic development. And we're looking to put that on the upcoming city council agenda, just so we can expand that list of consultants that we have.
Yeah, that's good to hear, considering some of the changes, right? There's a couple of changes to CEQA that are supposed to be taking effect in the near future, so I guess it'll be good to stay on top of that.
Yeah, there's been a few carve-outs from CEQA, exemptions from CEQA related to housing, so it's,
I think maybe one of the other items, and I think it's kind of been on hold for a while, is the Amazon, I think, conditional use permit. I think that was something that had gone to the city council. I think they were just waiting for a traffic study.
there is that, and there are also ongoing negotiations for an agreement for the offsite improvements. And I'd like to tell you that that's 95% done, but it's been 95% done for the last 3 months. So, but yeah, there's a number of little things that seem to be having to be addressed before we can finally say the city and Amazon have come to terms. But it's still in the process over in Public Works.
Got it. Any other comments or questions from my colleagues? No? Seeing as to that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Our next meeting is going to be September 16th. So
September.
motion to adjourn to September 16th.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Do we need a roll call? Can we all say aye?
You just hit the hammer or the gavel, you're good.
That works.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. It's 7:57.